Okay, so if you remember, we were discussing this builder method, right? And we guys were trying to develop a text field through this builder method. So we are already done with defining the hint text, then position hint, then size of the hint along the x-axis, and then we have this width over here, right? And now if I will just save the changes and run it, so I think I'll be able to get the output. Okay, what is it saying? Okay, there is an error, and the error is I have used equal to, right? In place of equal to this colon will come. Then only we'll get the output. So are you able to see this text field over here, Anand? Your voice is not audible here. If you can please speak loudly. Am I audible to you? Are you able to hear me? I think there seems to be some issue with the speakers of your device. You can drop a message in the chat box of this meeting, no problem. So I'm passing this code to you, and you can also try it at your end. Just check whether it is giving you the correct output or not. So this is what builder method helps us with, right? If you do not want to hardcore your mobile application, you can simply put whatever elements you want to see on your mobile application screen. You can put the code of that particular element inside a helper string, right? And then you can call the helper string like this over here inside the build function using this load string method. Okay, just remember this thing. Let me know if you're getting the correct output here. I'm still not able to hear you, Anand. Am I audible to you right now? Is it fine? Okay, I think there is some issue with your speakers here. You can put a mess. Yeah, now I think I'll be able to hear you. Okay, so are you getting the output here? Are you getting the output? Anand, you're not audible, bitter. I think there is some issue with your speakers. Don't worry. Just drop a message in the chat box of this meeting that yes, I am fine. It's giving me the correct output, and I'll move to the next step then. No, dear, I'm not able to hear you. Hello, Anand.
Yes, sir, I am getting the result.
You're getting the result. What happened? Why you were not speaking here? Okay, the next thing is the next thing that we're going to, what we call it, insert in the mobile screen is helper text. Now, what happens with this helper
Yes,
text?
sir,
When you
I
will
am getting the result.
you're getting the result, chalo, that's fine. So what happens with this helper text? When you will see the output, you will automatically come to know about it. So let's say we want to see a text with our input box, and the text should say or click on forgot username, right? And if I now save the changes and run it, so why it's not getting visible here? Okay, I haven't defined the mode of this helper text. That is the reason this text is not getting visible to us. So what we can do, we can simply put helper text and then let's say mode and then colon. And there are two types of modes that we can use with our helper text. The first one is persistent. Okay, remember the name of the spelling. It is persistent. Now, if I will just save the changes and run the code, are you able to see this small text over here? Or click on forgot username. Right. So if you want to add some kind of text like this with your input box, you can get with the help of this helper text. Right. Now there are two types of mode you can define for this helper text. One is this persistent and the other one is on focus. So if I'll just write on focus in place of persistent, it is going to, right now I'm not seeing that text, but the moment I will click this input box, the text will be visible to me. See, so, that's the difference between persistent and on focus. If I'll again click here on this white screen, the text will go away. If I'll click on this input box, the text is again visible to me. So I prefer, and most of the professionals also prefer on focus and
Yeah.
persistent. It's totally your call. If you want to use on persist, or if you want to use persistent, you can go with persistent. You want to use on focus, you can go with on focus. I've passed the code to you in the chat box. Just check whether it is giving you the correct output or not. Give you the output here. Just copy and paste it in your Sublime text. Copy the code and paste it in your Sublime text. So have you understood? Have you understood the meaning of this helper text? Why we are using helper text? Why we use helper text?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for for your feedback. Now let's understand about the icon method. If suppose you have to add some icon to your input box, so how can you do that? So you can use icon right property for that. Fine, there is something called icon right, there is something called icon left. If you want to see the icon on the right side, you can use icon right, or if you want to see
Yes, sir.
on the left side, you can use icon left. So for now, I'm using this Android icon. Okay, let me just run the code
Yes.
and see the output. So, an Android icon is right now visible to me over here, but it's black in color and this one is blue in color. I want everything to be of the same color. So what we can do for
Yes, sir.
this, we can define a primary palette. Do you remember that primary palette thing?
Yes, sir.
We did it in the last previous lecture. So what we can do, we
Yes, sir.
can put self dot theme dot sorry underscore cls dot
Yes.
primary
Palette.
and let's make it red. So if I go now, everything is in, okay, this is not in red. Can you tell me why
Yes, sir.
it's not coming in red here?
Sir, icon.
Icon, what icon? Sorry, the icon is not in red. See, it's in black. The
Yeah.
text
Yes, sir.
input box has changed its color. Earlier it was in blue and now it is getting reflected in red, but the icon color has not changed. So for changing the icon color, what we can do, there is a property with which we can do it, and the name of the property is icon. Uh,
Okay.
right?
Theme color.
No, it is not change color; it is color, right?
Yes,
And then
icon.
suppose you want to apply this theme color on this icon color.
Yes.
So what you can do, you can
Yes.
simply copy this theme underscore cls dot primary palette and you can put it over here. Just before it, you have to write app also. If you will not write this app, and if you will simply put this and run the code, it will not give you the output. Let me just show it to you. See, it is not
Yes,
giving us
sir.
anything. So we need to write app dot this, and then if we'll run the code, again, I'm not getting the output. Why is it so? Okay, it should be primary color, not primary palette. Yeah, that is why I was not getting the output. So now it has also changed its color to red, right? So that is
Yes,
how
sir.
you can change the theme of the entire screens. Fine, let me just pass the code to you in the chat box so that you can also try it at your end. The code is there in the chat box here. Just give it a try.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Getting the result.
Getting the output now. Chalo, that's great. Now
Yes.
Anand, if you have designed 3 or 4 or 5 screens, and you want to
Yes.
put this text field on all the 5 screens, you want to see this text field on all the 5 screens. So for each of the 5 screens, you will have to define this whole code individually. Am I right?
Yes.
The way we have
Yes, sir.
defined the code for one screen, in the same way, if we have 5 different screens, for that, for each of the 5 screens, we'll have to define this code individually. Now, instead of going with this long cut method, let me just tell you how can you make it a shortcut method. How can you do it with a shortcut way? So what you can do, you can create a new file like this. Just press Control and N keys together for creating a new file.
Yes, sir.
And just come on File and then Save As. And let's save it with a unique name over here. So I'm saving it with helpers.py. Right. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this whole thing and I'm cutting it. Sorry, I'm not copying it. I'm cutting it and I'm putting it over here. So this helpers.py is now, will now act as a module for my mobile application. And if you have to import a module, so what you have to do for that, you can simply come here, in this Python file, and you can write here
Yes.
from helpers, because helpers is the name of our module, right? So from
Yes.
helpers, and I would like to import this username helper string. So simply I can put it over here like this. And now if I will save the changes, I think I'll be able to get the same output which I was getting earlier. See, I'm getting the output. So that's the benefit of using builder method. You can put it
Yes.
in a separate file. You can create your own modules, right? If you are using builder method. Can you just do it yourself? Because you already have the,
Yes, sir.
just do it and let me know if you are able to get the correct output or not.
Sir. Yes, sir. I'm getting the output.
Getting the output, chalo, that's great. Thank you very much for confirming that. Now let's try MD rectangle flat buttons. So for that I'll have to, okay, just tell me the code, just tell me the library that I'll have to define here for getting the MD rectangular flat button. So what should I write? From, after that?
From Kivymd.
The MD, absolutely right. Then dot,
Dot.
yes.
Dot button.
No, UIX there, because it is,
Oh, yes, sir.
right,
UIX dot
something related
button.
to widgets. UIX dot button, not buttons. It is button, right?
Yes,
And
sir. Button.
we need to import
Import. Yes.
MD,
Button.
not button.
MD.
It is the name of the button that will come. MD
Yes, sir.
rectangle
Rectangle.
flat, right? Is it clear to you, dear?
Yes, sir.
Just
Yes,
remember
sir.
this line, okay? Because definitely you'll have to use it many times in your code. Okay, let's
Yes, sir.
come down, and here we have defined this username. Then we have added a screen. We are adding a widget here. So just before it, let's create a button. So button is equal to MD, a rectangle flat button. And the text I would like to see getting reflected on the top of my button is this. Let's make it show, right? And let's define the position of the button. So it should be the same, center X, center Y, and should be in the center. So I'm using this code only for now. I think it will do. And then we have this username in which we are calling this, helper string. Then we are adding this to our widget, and we have to also add the button also to our widget. So for doing that,
Yes.
you can simply write button here. Fine. So the code is almost the same. Now, if I will run the code,
Yes.
so I think I'll be able to get a button also. See, I'm getting a button also here.
Yes.
Now the question for you is, Anand, this button is overlapping with my input box. If I
Yes, sir.
see it somewhere over here, if I have to bring it over here, what should I change in my code?
Position of the button.
Position of the button. So shall I change this center underscore X, or should I change this value of center underscore Y?
Center underscore Y.
Absolutely right, because we have to shift it downwards. We want to move
Yes,
it
sir.
along the y-axis. Absolutely right here. So if I'll just change it to 0.4, I think I'll be able to get the output. See, now the button is coming here. How beautiful it is looking.
Yes.
Let me just share this code
Yes.
in the chat box. Just give it a try and let me know if you're getting the correct output or not. And you know, Anand, whatever code I'm sharing with you, I would like you to just copy it and paste it somewhere in your notepad file, or open a Word
Yes.
file and paste everything over there. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm getting the result.
You're getting the output. Chalo. Now let me just
Yes.
tell you how can you add a function to your button. See, right now if I'm clicking the button, it's not a responsive button. It is not giving me any kind of output.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
what I want is, if I'll write something over here, suppose I write my name over here, and if I click this button, I should see my name getting reflected in the console panel. So how
Yes,
can
sir.
I make it happen? So for that, I can bind this button, bind a function with this button. So what we can do for binding a function to this button, we can simply put a separator at the end. And here we can make use of this property called on release. And then
Yes,
we
sir.
can, if the button will be pressed. So I would like a function to be called, and let's put a random name here. So show data. Let's say there is a function called show data, and I would like the interpreter to call this function for me if the user clicks the button. Now we haven't defined any code for show data yet. We need to define this function, the code for this function called show data. So for that, what we can do, just after this return screen, we need to come out of this build class first. Okay. If you will define the function inside build, you will not get the output. So you'll have to define the function outside the build function. So def, the name of the function is show data, right? And by default, this, you need to pass
Yes.
two
Self.
parameters to it. One is the self and the other one is the object. Okay, so this
Yes,
is
sir.
the syntax of, you can say Kivymd. If you are using a function, then you need to pass two parameters to it. One is self and the other one is object. Now let's say whatever the user is going to write inside the username text. Okay. Can you
Yes,
tell me,
sir.
Anand, where whatever the user will write in the input box, where it will come and get saved? Is it going to come inside this
In
screen?
the,
Yes, dear.
no, sir, in the output area.
Dear, output, see, the output is this. The output of this function is a screen. So we are
Yes,
able
sir.
to see the output. We are able to see all the elements. But I'm asking you that if the user will write something in the input box, where it will get saved, where it will go and get saved. See, we are loading the string here, right? So
Yes,
whatever
sir.
the user will write in the input box, it is automatically going to come in this username named variable. Are you
Yes,
getting my point?
username.
Now,
Yes, sir.
how can we pull the value from this username named variable? So we can make use of self dot username. Okay, and then we need to write text because we want to pull the text value, right? Now, if I'll simply save the changes and run the code, let's see what I will get. So if I will write my name here, Gaurav Kumar Jain, and if I'll simply push this show button, I'm getting an error. Can you tell me why I'm getting this error, Anand? Why this error is coming? It's a very simple question. Why I'm getting this error? See, it is saying print self.username.text. And after that, it is telling us that there is an attribute error which exists in the code. Demo app
Yes.
object has no attribute username. So, it is not able to locate this username thing. Why it is not able to locate it? Let me just brief you about that. Here we are using self.username. But here we have used only username. We have not used anything like self.username.
Yes.
We need to change it to self.username, right? So as to make it globally accessible. Now, if I will run the code and if I'll, okay, sorry, why it is showing us this error? It should not show us the error. Self.username builder.load string. This is fine. Self.username. Let me check. Okay, here it should be self.username, right? Because we have used self.username here. So here also it should be self.username. Now, if I will run the code, yeah, it's running, and Gaurav Kumar Jain show. So you can see I am getting the output here in the console panel. Is it visible to you, dear? Gaurav Kumar Jain?
Yes.
If I'll push it
Yes.
again, see, again, I'm able to print my name in the console panel. So, that is how you can make a button active. You can just bind a function to that button using on release parameter, and simply you can define the code for that particular function. Now, suppose you do not want to see it in the console panel. You do not want to see the result in the console panel. You would like to see the result in a dialog window. Right. So what you can do for that, you'll have to define a code with which you can get the dialog window kind of thing. So in Kivymd, we have kivymd.uix. So we have this thing called dialog, right? And from here, we'll import md dialog. Okay, so I think spelling is incorrect. Yeah, now it is perfectly fine. And here O should not be there. So there is something called MD dialog, with the help of which we can create a full-fledged dialog window. Now, how to use this MD dialog window? So we can come down here and you can see here we are getting the output, right? This is a function which is
Yes.
giving us the output in the console panel. Now we can get rid
Yes.
of this. Instead of getting rid of this, let's use a variable here. All right, and here we can use md dialog is equals to, not equals to, sorry, it's a function. So the first thing I need to define is the title. So suppose you want to see as a title, let's say user name or user credentials. This is what you would like to see as a title getting reflected on the top of the dialog window. And then the text that you want to see getting reflected inside the text window, inside the dialog boxes, this, whatever the user is going to type. So we can simply put it over here. And then if we'll simply save the changes and now run the code, let's see whether we'll be able to get the output or not. So we are not getting the output. We are getting an error message. So it says, cannot import name md dialog from kivymd.uix. Why it is showing us this error? Let me just change. So it is kivymd.uix. Everything is fine. Why it is showing us this error then? Okay, it should be in capital, right? MD of
Capital D.
dialog should be in capital. That is the
Yes.
reason we were getting the error. And let me just change it to dialog 1, because dialog we have already used here. So maybe the interpreter, it may get confused. So now if I'll save the changes and run the code, and here I'm going to write my name, Gaurav K. Jain, and let me hit the show button. We are not getting anything. See, neither in the console panel nor any dialog box is getting reflected. Can you tell me, Anand, why we are not getting any kind of dialog window? It's just because there we haven't written the code with which the interpreter can open the dialog window. There is a
Yes.
function called, see, we have defined the dialog, sorry, we have defined the code for creating a dialog window, but we haven't written anything for accessing it. So the code is this open. Now if I will save the changes and run the code and write here my name Gaurav K Jain. So I think I should see the dialog window this time. See, user credentials Gaurav Kumar Jain. So that's
Yes,
the thing you can do very easily. Let me just pass the code to you in the chat box so that you can also try it at your end. Just give it a try and let me know once you're through with it. Hitting the rhythm. That's okay. Now, there is an issue, Anand. Let me just show you that issue. If I'll reduce the size of this window, sorry. Let me first define my name here, show. If I'll reduce the size of this window, see, the view of the, this, what we call it, dialog window is getting distorted, right?
yes,
Now, how to protect the view of the dialog window? How to make it responsive? So there is a property called size hint, right? If you want to make your mobile applications mobile responsive, right? So that you can protect
sir.
their screens from being distorted when they come on your mobile phone or any of the mobile phones. So that's the way you can do it. You can simply define this property called size hint, and then you can, pass the relevant values here. So 0.5, 1, if I'll pass and say the changes, run the code. So now the output which I will get will be satisfactory. Show. I am getting an error here. Why is it showing us this error? I think I haven't used this prop. Okay, it should be size hint. There was a spelling mistake. Let me run it again. Gaurav, show. Now, see, now it is working perfectly fine. Right, so that's the magic of size hint. Let me just, can you just try it out on your own? Just put size hint at the end. Okay, and pass these two values to it.
Yes, sir.
And Anand, there is one difference, when we are coding something and we are defining these parameters. So we are separating them with the help of this, these separators. But if you are using the helper string, you are using the builder method, then you need not to
Yes, sir.
use the separators, right? You can see here,
Yes, sir.
we haven't used separators. So you need to just
Yes, sir.
understand this difference. Besides that,
Yes,
Anand,
sir.
here we are using equal tos, and here we are using
Yes, sir.
colons.
Colon.
Okay, so just remember these
Yeah.
differences. Now, Anand, I am getting a very simple dialog window here. It's a very simple dialog window, right? And here I'm not getting any kind of buttons. Now, if you want to, define some buttons over this dialog window, how can you do it? So it's very simple. Sorry, I forgot, I by mistake unshared my screen here. So what we can do, we can call a button on the top. So we are not going to use this MD rectangle flat button for this. We'll use MD, let's make it MD flat button. I think this will look good. So MD flat button we will use, and simply we can come down here. And so here we have defined this code, then show data is here, and here is our dialog window. So right below this dialog window, I think before opening the dialog window, here we can define the buttons we want to see on the dialog window, or else let's put it right on the top over here, so as to avoid any kind of confusion. So let's first use a close button. So MD flat button. Okay, and the text I would like to see getting reflected on the top of this close button is this close. And then, if the user clicks on this close button, I would like something to happen. So what should happen? I would like a function to be called. So self dot close, let's say dialog. We do not have any such function right now. We'll be defining it later on. No worries. For now, I am just defining the button. So this is going to be our first button. And we need to have another button with, let's say, with name more button. And the text which should get reflected on the top of the button is more. And I do not want to bind any kind of function with it. Okay, if you want, you can, create a own function, create a function of your own, and then you can bind it using this on release method. For now,
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to define any kind of function for this button. Okay, now how to add these buttons to this dialog window? So we have a parameter called buttons. So for that, we'll have to come on in the next line so that you can also see everything. So here we can write buttons because we have to bind two buttons. So we need to pass a list of elements to this buttons parameter. So the first element in this list will be close button and the second element will be more button. Now, if I'll just save the changes and run the code, and now if I'll put a username here, Gaurav Kjan, and show, it is giving me an error. Okay, why it is giving me an error? Maybe I haven't defined any function named on release, no attribute, close dialog. Is there any issue? Is there anything I'm missing? Okay. Let me just remove it for now. Let me just try whether this will give us the correct output or not. And after that, I'll define the function's name. Or okay, Jan show. Are you able to see these buttons over here, dear?
Yes, sir.
Button is there, more button is there. You know, that is how you can make your mobile applications look more appealing. And now it's time for us to define the functions code, which is, close dialog. So what we can do, we can simply put the code. Where should we put the code? Should we put it here or should we put it outside it? Let's do one thing. Let's just put it outside this show data. So define close dialog. Okay, and here also we are going to pass two different parameters, self and the other one will be object. Then we can say self dot. Now what I want is if the user clicks the close button, the window should go disappear. It should get closed automatically. So for closing the dialog window, can you tell me the name of the variable in which the dialog window is there?
Dialog 1.
Yeah. What is the name of that variable in which we have the dialog box saved?
Dialog.
It is not dialog here.
Close dialog.
It is dialog 1.
Dialog 1.
Right. It is
Yes,
dialog 1. So dialog 1. And then we can say there is a function called dismiss, we can call. Now, if I'll save the changes and run the code, let's see whether we'll be able to get the correct output or not. So Gaurav Kjan, and this time if I'll hit this close button, I am getting an error. Why is it so? Has no attribute dialog 1. Has no attribute dialog 1. Why is it saying that it doesn't have any such attribute? Close dialog. This is perfectly fine. Self dot. Let me just pass this code to you first. You can try this code, right? And I'm working. By the time you're trying this code, I'm going to work on this error. Okay, I'll not be able to pass this whole code to you, dear, because there is some limitation. I think word limit in the chat on the chat box of this meeting. So I'll be passing it to you on your WhatsApp wall. Fine.
Yes.
Let's resolve the issue with this function. Can you try and find out the error, dear? Why we are getting the error? We have defined dialog 1, MD dialog. This is perfectly fine. Here we are calling this close function. So this is the close function. And here we are dismissing the dialog 1 box. If I'll just change it to dialog, let me check if I'll be able to get the correct output or not. No, I'm not getting the correct output. Dialog one not open. Okay, let's just define it inside this. If I'll put